night, Simi was on fire. He just was amazing. So if you haven't heard him, if you weren't able to hear him last night, go and check that out. Listen to that. It was fabulous. If you haven't been here in the building before, the emergency exits are located at the front and the rear of the aircraft. And right? And the men's room is over in that corner. Ladies' room is in that corner. So not to be confused. There's only 2 bathrooms, right? Male and female, the way God intended it. So, and if you haven't been to the men's room, it is a men's room. Because we believe in raising men in the body of Christ. So, let's get started with a word of prayer. Oh, there is coffee in the back. Somebody was giving me the hand signals, We have coffee and water in the back. And if there's anything that you need to make you more comfortable throughout the day, just let us know and we'll try to accommodate you. We'll watch for the temperature. Now, temperatures are always crazy because, you get some that are like, oh, it's so hot in here. And others are like, can you turn the heat up? And it's all at the same time. Last time we got together it was 72 degrees in here, and someone, it's freezing. Anyway, so we'll try and manage that as best we can, all right? So, Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity that you have put into our hands to make a difference in our culture and society today. Lord, we want to be about your business. We want to occupy. We want to do what you want us to do. And Lord, I pray you would stir us today. Download a deposit within us today. Lord, we don't need information. We need impartation. We need to have a motivation. We need to get our feet in the street. Lord, we need to go into all the world and begin to make those disciples that you've called out of darkness. And so today I pray that would be the ultimate end game, that we would get so excited about what we have before us and the opportunity to change this region, to change this state, to change this nation, to see a true transformation, a true reformation come on our watch because of your grace. Lord, without your grace, without your mercy, without your hand upon us, we can do nothing. And so we plead with you, open the heavens. Oh, Father, pour out such a blessing that we don't have room enough to contain it. Let that harvest begin here. Let us be the ones that rise up and shine with your glorious light in this generation. So, Lord, we commit all that is happening here today into your hands. Holy Spirit, lead and guide and do what you do best in us and through us. We commit this time to you in Jesus' name. And all the believers said, amen. Would you welcome Mary Solomon, the putter honor of all of this? Thank you, Mary.
All righty. Thank you for being here today. One of the things that we're going to do is we're having a panel at 11 o'clock with all of our speakers this morning. So that would be, and from Simi last night. So that'd be Valerie and Ann and Brad Clippard, which is he here? Oh, okay. God, good. So my friend Nancy Joy is going to pass around a basket right now. And hopefully you have a pen. If you don't, we'll get you one. And so these papers are for questions for the panel. So as the speakers are speaking this morning and you have a question or something you'd like to ask them, write your question down, then we'll collect them. And then when the panel comes, we'll pull the questions out and we'll read them. We'll try to get it to as many questions as possible. So that's the way we want to do it this morning and today, okay? Pardon me? Huh? No. Okay, so our first speaker is Valerie, how do I say your last name? Masai Aspas. And she is an educator, mother, and the interim chair of the Snohomish County chapter of Moms for Liberty. She has experience teaching and tutoring in Japan, Buffalo, New York, Seattle, and Edmonds, Washington. Valerie has a passion for teaching English language learners and holds a master's in education from the University of Buffalo. Throughout her short teaching career, she noticed how toxic ideologies have infiltrated education and negatively affected student learning outcomes, success, safety, and well-being. She publishes regularly on her Substack, Confessions of a Plague Rat. And so you need to go to that Substack and you need to get on, subscribe to her because she's an amazing writer. You want to help me with this, Valerie? Come on up. Can you just give a little hand clap for Valerie? Valerie, want to help me put this down? And the thing is with Valerie, if you've gotten to know Valerie even for a month, you want to help me pull this down? Thank you. Yeah, so you could use that. If you've gotten to know Valerie even for a month, you notice that she loves her daughter. She's a very good mother, besides all of these other accomplishments and achievements. And basically, the love of her mother and the love of family and what she saw in the school districts is what has brought her up to us today. And so I know you're really going to enjoy her. And if you got those piece of papers, I know you're going to have some great questions for her later. Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you, Mary. Awesome. Well, thank you, Mary, and good morning, everybody. It's such a great opportunity to be here today with all of you. I know some of you are looking at me like, dang, that looks like a liberal up there. She's got tattoos down to her arm. She's got cats and all kinds of potentially demonic imagery. No, it's not demonic, I promise. I'm a new Christian. I was baptized in January at Pursuit, such a beautiful church. I had a interesting path to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. It took a while, though, and I had to go through some darkness to get there. And some of that darkness, a lot of that is in, unfortunately, it's in the world of public education. So how can I introduce myself? Some of you might know me from having worked at Edmonds School District and resigning at the beginning of the school year last year. It just became too much. Edmonds School District pays very well. It's one of the best paid districts in the state, if not the country. And what I found is the more flush with cash a school district is, the more likely they are to spend it on things like DEI professionals who they hire fresh out of college, which is amazing. And taking orders from somebody that's never seen the inside of a classroom. So one of the big things I wanted to talk about today is kind of a glimpse from the other side. So how can I get started here? My first step into the world of education came from the world of martial arts. I have been an athlete most of my life, a female athlete, a proud female athlete. And in 2013, here I'll put my jiu-jitsu hat on because I like to wear many hats. So I've got my athlete hat on right now. And in 2013, I went to a invitation-only, women's-only Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament. And to my surprise, one of my opponents was a transgender person. And at the time, I didn't know what to think of the situation. I was in denial. I thought, this large, manly-looking woman is perhaps just a woman? Anyway, most of my training partners back then were men anyway, so after a 30-minute battle, I finally wore this person down and managed to defeat this person. I'm just refusing to use pronouns at all here. But it woke me up to something. And at the time, I wasn't even a Christian, but I was training regularly with a group of Muslim girls. And these Muslim girls were not allowed to train with men that were not their brothers. These Muslim girls were not allowed to touch men who were not in their family. So it was really important that these people of faith only had female opponents, only had female training partners. Now, if this wasn't myself competing against this transgender person that claimed to be a woman, and it was one of my teammates, especially one of my 14, 15-year-old female Muslim teammate, okay, whose rights are more important here? Okay, is this about women? Is this about diversity? Okay, it's just bananas. I mean, when did we we can't even agree on what a woman is. How can we agree on anything if we can't agree on what our simple facts of our daily reality is? So this was my first seed of doubt, because I always had fancied myself a liberal and always fancied myself somebody that looked out for the little guy. In this case, I'm going, well, what about these Muslim girls? What about their rights? What about women's rights? So that was my first seed of doubt. I graduated in 2012 from the University of Hawaii with a degree in Japanese language. I've always been interested in linguistics and language. As we all know, 2023 is a very interesting environment for somebody that's interested in language, as we're constantly changing definitions and pulling the rug out from under people with our language usage. Honestly, it all seemed like a university bubble, a lot of the gender ideology stuff. I thought, this is so strange. It's never going to escape the walls of theory. This is all theory. It's gender theory. You can think what you want in the university walls. You can talk about whatever you want. I'm a little bit of a free speech absolutist. But when that pours out of the university and into our K through 12, pre-K through 12 classrooms, that's when it doesn't become, oh, we're playing with ideas. It becomes, no, we're enforcing our ideas on extremely young, impressionable minds. So anyway, where was I? This is a really good book that you can read that helps you kind of understand how things poured out from the university into the real world. It's called The Coddling of the American Mind by Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt. It was published in 2020 before the pandemic. It's due for an update after that. But in it, they chronicle how DEI and gender inclusion policies have gotten really extreme. Some of you might have heard about Bret Weinstein. He was a biology professor. He's an evolutionary biologist. He's got a great podcast. Gosh, what is it called? Anyway, Bret Weinstein, PhD in biology, has no qualms with saying that a woman is a woman and a man is a man, got run out of his university role because he refused to not participate in a day of action where no white people were supposed to come to the campus that day. In 2017. That was 6 years ago. So it's been pouring out of the universities ever since. There's another case, a similar case that happened to Peter Boghossian in Oregon as well. So this is the opposite of what I had seen as what liberal ideology was. So it's less about your individual ideas. It's less about you're exploring ideas. You have a free mind. You're critically thinking. You're not allowed to critically think anymore. Right now, we're seeing, he starts by talking about trigger warnings, 2015. They started putting trigger warnings on things. They started pulling great literature from university-level courses, like the novel Things Fall Apart. Has anybody read that? Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. You'd think they would love him because he's a Nigerian man that wrote a very powerful novel, published it in 1959. It's about the European colonization of Nigeria. So again, you'd think, oh, colonization, white people bad, this could be a good book. Nope, it was too heavy, so they pulled it from the university systems, some of them anyway, due to the protesting of students. They said, we need trigger warnings, there's things like rape and murder happening in this novel, we don't want to hear it. Which is very unfortunate. So you have this coddling of college-level students at the same time that for our K-12 students, our very young, impressionable students, you have very extreme, comprehensive sex education being pushed onto the youngest kids. So you have the infantilization of adults, and you have the adultification of children. And this sort of confusion does a really good job of separating the relationship between children and their parents. It is extremely intentional. And of course, that is why I joined up with Moms for Liberty. Moms for Liberty is a parents' rights group. It's a parents' rights organization that stands for parents' rights at all levels of government, from the school board, which is where a lot of change can happen. It's a really important level. There's a lot of focus on the school board and involvement in endorsing school board candidates, supporting school boards, speaking at school board meetings, letting families and communities know what's going on behind those school walls. So I taught here in Washington State from 2019 to 2022. I'm still a teacher, but now I teach at a daycare, which is awesome. I teach at an at-home daycare. So I used to make pretty good money teaching high school for Edmonds School District to working at a daycare where I can be with my daughter all day, because quite frankly, that's the most important job that I have. That's the most important hat that I can wear. So I went from teaching teenagers to teaching toddlers, so I still have to put up with a lot of crap. It's just, am I dealing with a crappy attitude or crap-filled diapers? I'll trade one for the other. I loved teaching, though. I loved teaching English. I spent a full quarter of a year teaching 1984 because those are extremely powerful lessons. If you haven't read 1984 recently, I highly recommend it. Anyway, so I taught for a while, and I started off as a liberal, which I use the dictionary to look up. It's willing to, now get this is the dictionary definition of a liberal, willing to respect or accept behavior or opinions different from one's own. Or relating to a political and social philosophy that promotes individual rights, civil liberties, democracy, and free enterprise. Wow, free enterprise? That sounds like capitalism. A lot has changed. A lot has changed in just a few years. And probably since before that. I've just been waking up to it. Today's so-called liberals, they do not respect or accept behavior or opinions different from their own. You must accept Dylan Mulvaney as a woman. You must accept Fallon Fox, who is a female transgender mixed martial artist who sends women to the hospital. You must accept these people as women, or else. You must not say a peep against the pornographic graphic novels in schools for the sake of diversity, or else. There is clearly a correct opinion to have in today's polite society. I think we all know that. And there is no room for behavior or opinions different from one's own. So they've trounced their own definition. For them, there is a higher power to answer to, but it's not God. It's the mob. And the mob does not have much of a conscience, right? Furthermore, today's liberal worldview sees promoting individual rights as a dog whistle for fascism. I mean, I like my individual rights, and that used to mean something. Civil liberties are for those only that fall under the colors of the Pride Progress flag. Now, I wish I had a picture of it here. I certainly would never buy a flag of it, but you can picture it in your mind, all right? You've got the rainbow flag, you've got that triangle that has the transgender colors followed by a brown stripe and a black stripe. And it's an arrow, and you can almost visually imagine this arrow coming across that rainbow flag and just totally enveloping it. Now, what's the message here? You have to understand what intersectional theory is, which evolved in the 90s as one of the first branches of critical race theory, which is such a hot button word nowadays, right? So intersectional theory is the idea, now picture in your head a big circle, and there's a line in the middle. And on the top circle is privilege. Okay, you're privileged if you're part of these groups of people. You're privileged if you're white-skinned. You're privileged if you're European, if you're a native speaker of English, if you're Christian, if you're straight, blah, 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 blah. You are oppressed, right? These are clean lines, no variation, right? Underneath, it's all the opposite, right? You're oppressed if you're black. You're oppressed if you're a non-native speaker of English. You're oppressed if you come from a lower educated background. You're oppressed, blah, 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 blah. Excuse me. So the idea of intersectional theory is however many markers you have on the bottom makes you more oppressed compared to how many markers you have on the top, how many of these identity markers you identify with. And the idea originally in legal discourse was, it's kind of complicated, but it has to do with how hate crimes are prosecuted, and it was never intended to be a societal worldview. Of course, that's what happened. Now it's a part of this societal worldview, and we see it clearly displayed on the pride flag. So what we see on the pride flag is an inversion of that hierarchy. It doesn't say, let's destroy the hierarchy, which I would be in favor of, right? Doesn't matter if you're black, you're white, you grew up speaking English, Spanish, you grew up in Mexico, you grew up in Canada. I don't care. Like, we're all brothers and sisters under God, am I right? I mean, did God draw those borders, right? I mean, they exist for a reason, but let me tell you something. When I was working at Seattle World School, that was the first seed that I had that brought, one of the first seeds that pushed me onto my path with Christ. I had students that had fought tooth and nail to get here. Do you know how Christian and religious folks from Ethiopia are? They are very religious, long time religious. They've been worshiping Christ since before, you know, some of us with Viking roots, right? Folks from south of the border, some of them, very religious. And that kind of nudged me a little bit to go, wow, these kids' faith in God helped bring them here to this place, and they have gratitude, and they're learning English, and they're happy to do it. Another interesting story from Seattle World School, God bless them. See, here's the thing that people don't realize about teachers. Most of them are not bad. Most of them, they're not intentionally trying to corrupt anybody. Raise your hand if you're a current or former teacher. All right, yeah, awesome. Some hands in the room. I love it. Anne, who's speaking after me, has taught for 30 years. Talk about a wealth of experience and knowledge, right? And they want, you know, people in Moms for Liberty, the media is trying to portray us as a bunch of wackadoodles that don't know what we're talking about. Anyway, where was I? Oh, goodness. Yes. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm not a super experienced public speaker. If you can't tell already, I'm not used to this. Anyway, thank you. God bless you. Yeah, high schoolers. So, you know, brand new immigrants to the country I was teaching. These guys gave me so much faith in our future. But one of the things that was really interesting for me, there was a teacher that I looked up to a lot. She was just so cool. She'd been teaching for like 8 years. She had taught the class before I did, helped me out with some curriculum. It's the second unit. I'm teaching newcomers, so brand new students to the country. Like they're still learning, you know, bus, man, woman, fish. I go to work today. These basic English speaking skills. Pronouns are difficult in the English language. Pronouns are weird. You have your subject pronoun, object, possessive, nominal possessive, reflexive, and at least a couple others, okay? So it is complicated. And trying to, you know, just teach that basic idea to students was a big challenge. So this awesome teacher that I looked up to a lot said, hey, I've got a great lesson plan for you. I'm like, all right, lay it on me. He goes, okay, well, first of all, you're going to show your students an episode of this show called I Am Jazz. Yeah. And you're going to teach them, it was basically a mini lesson in gender ideology. You're gonna go through these slides and show them, oh, a dress. Who wears a dress, man or woman? Oh, why do you think that? This is all, it's manipulation, yes, but it has to do with generative dialogue, which James Lindsay talks about a lot. I'll have these books in the back when I'm done speaking, but James Lindsay talks about it a lot. He does some deep dives into gender ideology and how pervasive it is in pretty much all professions at this point. In our government, in our education, and everything. So creating this generative dialogue that is steeped in critical theory, which is steeped in postmodernist ideology, and postmodernism is all about questioning reality. It's all about questioning the idea, one of the main ideas of postmodernism is not that language exists to identify reality. Reality is what is made from language. So saying you are a man makes you a man, not this is the reality, this is a man, we're gonna come up with language to identify. It's not only problematic from a linguistic perspective, but it's problematic from, I mean, it's so obvious to us, to just regular thinkers. This is reality. We know what reality is. But folks that spend a lot of time in the university halls, I saw this from my gender studies professor, they just get so twisted up in the cave of their mind. They're not touching grass, as the young people say. They're not, yeah, all right. They're not getting out into the real world. They haven't used their hands to do anything in a while, besides keyboard warrior type, right? So this connects really well with them, even though postmodernist philosophy really came to be in the 60s and 70s. Wonder what else was happening around that time that might try to corrupt the minds of Americans. It's the Cold War, it's neo-Marxism. James Lindsay talks about it so much better than I do. Anyway, it was just bizarre to me to hear from this teacher that I really respected that, oh, this is what these kids need. They need to know about these different ideas around gender. It was so strange to me. It was the first warning that things were gonna get really strange here. And for the longest time, I thought, there's no way we can succumb to this. So anyway, I'll go back to, it's important that I talk about these English language learner kids because these are the very minorities that the liberal ideologues claim to protect, right? DEI exists to protect minority people, allegedly. But the thing is around, DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? The thing is that they want diversity of identity markers. They don't want diversity of thought. They don't want diversity of opinion. They want different colored same thinkers. And that's, obviously not a good thing because how can we have strong critical thinkers? How are we gonna have a society of people that have independent thought and question reality? They're not. And in a lot of ways, maybe that's the end goal. Maybe that's the end goal, is to succumb to this authority. And so when we enforce at local and federal levels of the government obedience to a strict worldview, what's that called? That's called authoritarianism, right? That's favoring or enforcing strict obedience to authority, especially that of the government, at the expense of personal freedom. And that's maybe a little twisted way as to how the liberals went from being in favor of individual rights and individual liberties to being against it and saying, oh, nope, individual rights, that sounds like a dog whistle for fascism, right? So maybe that's how we got here. So that's diversity. And then equity, of course. Equity used to mean something different. Did it not? At one point, equity used to be kind of maybe a good thing. Oh, this student is really struggling, maybe we can help them get them a tutor, right? Oh, this student, maybe we need to develop an IEP, an individualized education plan, to help them meet their educational goals. That's what equity used to mean, at least in my opinion. Another thing that equity used to mean was, here's this honors program for students that are high achievers and want to learn more and are committed to their educational growth. Here's this honors program for students. But now equity means we need to remove that honors program. This is what was happening in Edmond School District when I left. 9th grade English all became honors English. All students got to be in the honors class. It wasn't an honors class anymore. It's just, here's your participation trophy, good job. So that's what equity means nowadays. It means equal outcomes, not equality of opportunity. Now, equality of opportunity means you get to, take extracurriculars, you get to go into that advanced math program, don't have to worry about the kids that are gonna ask you a million questions and, how, can I copy your homework, blah, blah, blah. That kind of an idea. Oh, where was I? So that's equity. And inclusion, of course, when we talk about inclusion, go back to that, what is it called? Oh my goodness. Intersectional theory. When we talk about inclusion, they want intersectional theory inclusion. They don't want inclusion of the sons and daughters and granddaughters of police officers. No, they don't want inclusion of people that go to church, people that might want to pray before class. No, they want inclusion of after-school Satan Club, which is literally happening in some school districts. I mean, yeah, wow, could you be any more obvious? So that's happening. But at the end of the day, the main thing here is the minorities that they want to protect are actually getting the worst end of the deal. When it's so easy to just say, oh, I'm going to identify as a they, them, I'm going to identify as, I'm really like swimming, but I'm not the best men's athlete, but I might be able to be the best women's athlete. I can become a minority, right? You can only do that with gender. You can't do that with race. So why do you see the majority of these kids seeking transgender treatment coming from largely middle class, largely liberal, largely Caucasian families? Oh, this is my chance to not be an oppressor. Because kids just want to do what's cool. It's not cool to be white and Christian and straight. It's just not cool today with today's kids in this general cultural environment that we're in. So becoming a woman becomes a way to achieve your athletic goals. Now, I'm a retired mixed martial artist, and I started fighting when Dana White said women will never be in the UFC. I mean, there's women headlining the event tonight, so look how far we've come in just a short amount of time. Women are still fighting these battles. We're still fighting for basic equality, not equity. I'm talking about being able to go into a locker room and change without men watching you. I thought we were done with this fight already. Like, rah, rah, like we have Title IX now, but now they're trying to change Title IX. So that's been really frustrating as an athlete. In closing, oh goodness, we got to talk about SB 5599, my friends, because, and yeah, it's ugly out there, guys. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how the teachers union exists to protect adults. It exists to protect the people that work for the district. It does not exist to protect children. It does not exist to stand for their personal freedom, their medical freedom, their access to education. None of that. It's all about the adults. And this became glaringly obvious in my short but tumultuous career as a teacher, as a public school teacher anyway. There is a union of people who exist to protect kids, however. Do you know what that's called? Thank you. It's parents. It's parents. So of course, yeah, exactly. So of course, the Southern Poverty Law Center is going to say that Moms for Liberty is a hate group. Okay, God forbid we stand against people trying to separate parents from their children. Parents like Julie Barrett, whose story is not mine to tell, but most of you are probably familiar with it. She fought medical tyranny to get her 14-year-old daughter back in 2021. She finally got her back with the help of the police. A youth shelter had her captive. And allegedly, according to the Trevor Project, yeah, bad stuff, guys. Trevor Project and GLAAD. Look them up and look who's sponsoring them. Disney, Coca-Cola. Ugly. It's ugly. It's ugly out there. And the more you dig, the uglier it gets. And I'm still young, and I'm scared of what all I'm going to find. I got to be honest. But anyway, according to the Trevor Project, some 40% of transgender youth are homeless because they're in youth shelters. Well, if the youth shelters won't give their parents' kids back to the parents who love them and want them to be there, maybe that statistic is blown out of proportion. Maybe. Here's an example in that situation. Maybe some of you have heard of Sage's Law. It was the attempt at a Virginia law. I don't think it got passed, but in 2021, again, big year for weird stuff happening. I wonder what was happening in 2021. Wow, yeah, these kids, they spend so much time online. They're not socializing in person. They're doing deep dives into Tumblr. You have kids on the autism spectrum disorder that get really into stuff. And they have that black and white thinking, and they might think, oh goodness, like this is what's going on. I'm, 14, 15, I'm autistic, I have, some other mental health stuff going on, and oh, this has to be the solution. Oh, duh, I was born a boy. I'm not a girl, I'm a boy. I have to change this about myself to make myself happy. What a lie we're feeding these kids, man. So anyway, here's an example of how that happened. A woman named Michelle fought tooth and nail to retrieve her 14-year-old daughter, Sage, who never came home on the bus in August 2021. Virginia's Appomattox County High School kept the teen's newly asserted transgender identities secret from her parents. And the school district helped participate in a chain of events that led to that girl falling into the hands of sexual predators twice in 2 different states. It happened in Maryland, and then it happened again in Texas. The FBI found Sage in Maryland, and where she was victimized by a sexual predator, and a judge refused to return her to her parents because her nervous parents kept using the wrong pronouns. Desperate to get this kid back. You would be too. 14 years old, the state says they're capable of making their own medical decisions. It's bananas. I mean, what do we know about human psychology and the way that your brain works, right? We know that your prefrontal cortex isn't even finished developing until you're well into your 20s. So what are we doing saying that 14-year-olds know exactly who they are? This poor kid, Sage, the FBI found her in Maryland and was not returned to her parents. The state of Maryland kept her in their care. care. Let her stay in the male, what's it called? The male dormitory, basically, the boys' quarters of a children's home, kept her away from her parents, and she was assaulted again, because of course you are. Of course that's gonna happen. And it's an ugly world out there. And some of these kids, they have no idea. They see what's on Tumblr. They think that this friend that I met on Trevor Space, where kids age 13 can talk to adults up to the age of 22. Yep. They think that they're all, great people that aren't gonna abduct them and harm them. So she ran away from that situation again, ended up in Texas, and the great law enforcement agents in Texas helped bring her home. So, SB 5599 would empower the state to go even further than what happened to Julie Barrett's child, what happened to Sage. So it's super, super, super important that we all sign the referendum. It's super important that we reach out to our liberal friends, okay? Because if there's one thing that I really want to bring across here is that somebody that looks like me, somebody that can graduate from university, and somebody that might seem totally lost can be found. And sometimes all it takes is a word. Sometimes all it takes is a prayer. But when God answers that prayer, you better be ready to rise to meet it. So hopefully I can be a part of that fight here. So I will see you all at my booth, and thank you for putting up with me. Goodness, I am rusty. Thank you all.
Isn't she amazing? I told her she's one of my heroes in this battle. She is. Thank you. And she'll be up here in a few minutes with the panel. So if you have questions for her, write them down, okay? So our next speaker is from Moms for Liberty. So Valerie is the chair for Snohomish County Moms for Liberty, which she will be becoming the vice chair because she wants to get more involved in the legislative process. And then we have Ann, that is the King County chair for Moms for Liberty. And these are just courageous, strong warriors. And I'm just so proud and honored to be on their team. So Ann Strait was a speech-language pathologist with the public schools for over 30 years, providing her access to curriculum at multiple grade levels and access to teacher meetings and trainings. She is a trained volunteer for Truth in Textbooks, an organization that works to identify and correct errors and biases in textbooks before they are published and adopted. Ann has been working to sound the alarm on how academic excellence is being replaced by dangerous ideologies such as CRT, CSE, LGBTQ+, and the ever-present climate change hysteria, and will provide concrete ideas on how to protect children and families. Please welcome Ann.
Thank you so much. And I do have a PowerPoint. How do I? Okay, do I just point at you to move a slide? Okay, going through a lot because I am not a, I don't have a hat. I think that's such a great way to do it. I am not a professional speaker. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Now I'm official. Boy, aren't you guys lucky? Two hate groups back to back here. Wow. Yes. Before I start, I want to piggyback on what she mentioned. Everybody here knows about DEI. And a lot of us laughingly refer to it as DIE instead because it's the place where truth and merit go to die. But I had one of those head slap moments a while ago. DEI, how do you pronounce that in Latin? Day. And what does it mean? God. They're telling us what they're doing. And we just need to start listening. So, I go ahead, first slide. she gave, well, okay, so she gave my background. So next slide. So I describe education now as kind of a whack-a-mole sort of thing. I used to describe it as a Jules Verne Nautilus submarine with the tentacles, and you grab one tentacle and you take it off, and then there's this whole arm, and then you grab all the arms of the squid off, and there's another stinking squid behind it to take its place. Whack-a-mole's a little bit easier. And those moles, everybody knows that game, and those moles are communism. And they feed on ignorance, and they feed on evil. And that's what we're here to fight. So we're going to talk about what it was like before the moles invaded our educational process. This book here is called The New England Primer. Yeah, in the early colonial period, the purpose of reading was to be able to read the Bible. 1647, there was a act in Massachusetts called the Old Delude or Satan Act, and it recognized that Satan did not want people to read the scriptures. And so they required that every town of 50 or more people had to provide a school. And that doesn't mean compulsory schooling. It just meant they had to provide a school should you choose to use it. This was the first published textbook in the United States, 1690. It was the only published textbook for 50 years. It was the primary textbook for another 100 years. They only stopped printing this in the early 20th century. I have a copy here of the 1777 book, and it is literally a copy. It's not digitized. This is what the kids actually saw. And I want to tell you just a little bit about how, stay there. So how they taught kids to read. It starts out with a prayer by a reverend. This is the first grade textbook. Then a couple more prayers, a morning prayer and an evening prayer. Then it goes into the words that they're supposed to learn. Now, of course, they're learning to spell and read words like intersectionality, oppression, but they used to read words like glory and gratitude and graciously. Important words. There's little life lessons here. How to behave. Pray to God, take not God's name in vain, don't swear, speak the truth. It's about 20 rules for how to behave. Now our kids spend hours every week getting SEL lessons. And it is not about social emotional training. It's not about teaching people to behave well. It is the vehicle through which they insert communism. But you can take these same about 20 rules, you can condense it to 10 commandments, or you can condense it to a single sentence, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But they sure make it a lot more complicated. Everybody knows the alphabet is taught with those books. It'd be like, now it's A for anarchy, B for Black Lives Matter, C for COVID restrictions. This is how kids back in, this particular version is 1777, if I didn't say that. A, in Adam's fall, we sinned all. B, heaven defined, the Bible mind. So they learn the alphabet based on Esther and Ruth and Korah and Job. Then it goes into the questions that you learn to read. Who was the first man? Who built the ark? Who saves lost men? This is how they learn to read. And it goes on and on. I don't want to spend too much time on that because we all get it. But this has been removed from our schools. So I'm going to skip over the next couple of slides. Horace Mann, John Dewey, a lot of schools are named after them. Very, very bad guys, but we're not going to go into that. Now, I said this is 1777. There was a lot going on in 1777, but they still found time to print good textbooks. And in 1800, they did a study. And in 1800, I can't ask you because the answer's up there, but only 4 out of 1,000 people That's not a misprint. 4 out of 1,000 people were not proficient in reading and writing in 1800, where this was the only or primary textbook. Today, OSPI, which is the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, reports that in Washington, only half of our children are literate, and far less than half are proficient in math and science. So what happened? Well, they took God out of the schools, for one thing, and they replaced education with garbage, with moles. We're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk now about how the moles and how they've invaded. Everybody's familiar with 1619 Project, Comprehensive Sex Ed, Diverse Authors, Critical Race Theory, and I'll go through those a little bit here. So, 1619 Project, everybody's familiar with that, I think. And you can go on to the next slide. So if you get rid of that, you're still going to have textbooks that say America is systemically racist, capitalism is bad, socialism is good, progressives just want to help people. So that when you hit down that mole, this is what you're left with. There's nothing good waiting behind it. Next slide. Get rid of the CSE mandates and the flash curriculum. You're still going to have rainbow flags in the classroom. You're still going to have teachers involving their students in their fetishes. You're still going to have obscenity in the libraries. So just getting rid of these moles is not going to be enough. We need to go much deeper. See, how bad am I? I have to have written notes and a file and a PowerPoint behind me. So, next slide, please. Thank you. So math is the great equalizer, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I will just say that math is the equalizer because children from ESL backgrounds, children like my students that had speech and language problems, students from poor families that don't get the kind of rich vocabulary sometimes, math is the place that they can excel. And for a long time, they've been ruining math and turning it into a language activity. Okay, and now, of course, it's anti-racist. And I didn't bring it, but I've got the first couple pages of the Oregon State math program, anti-racist math, and I've highlighted all the times. It says white supremacy, toxic whiteness. It's absolutely stunning. Correct answers are not valued. But you get rid of anti-racist math and return to the good stuff. Well, the good stuff was back before the Wuhan virus, we had Common Core math. Common Core math had our children 2 years behind the rest of the developed world. They admit that Common Core math did not prepare your students for Ivy League or state university schools. It prepared them for junior colleges. And I'm not against junior colleges. I think in many ways they're better. But that's not what parents are looking for when they send their kids to school. They're looking for academics. They're looking for excellence. So we were 2 years behind other schools before the Wuhan. I just can't even imagine what it's like now. And then add to that the anti-racist math. Terrible. So next slide, please. Okay, so literature. One of the things that I've done recently, I was the community member on a curriculum selection committee where we choose the literature that the kids in the district are going to read for the next 10 to 12 years. And they forgot to tell me about the first meeting as a community member. But when I finally got there, the first thing they did was say, we're going into diversity training. I go, oh, you know, I didn't want to out myself, but I go, oh, I thought we were going to be talking about literature and language. Oh, no, first we need to go diversity. So I spent several days in diversity training, which is an eye-opener, as you can imagine, if you haven't already been through it. But one of the things, it's very surreal. They speak a totally different language. And being an SLP, I was pretty fluent in teacher speak, but this was even beyond me. They speak a different dialect than even I did. 8-10 years ago. So what they're worried about is, of course, diverse authors. They want kids to enjoy what they're reading. They want them to see themselves in it. Now, the whole point of school is to push you to be a little bit better. Classic literature uses advanced vocabulary, uses complex sentence structures, well-developed characters and ideas that transcend time. There's love and hate, there's jealousy, there's war, there's peace, there's adventure throughout history. Go back to Odysseus, and there's a great adventure story. So they're taking that away from our kids and having them read diverse authors. And one of the things they're taking away is our cultural literacy and our cultural heritage. That's what binds us together. If I say something about whitewashing the fence, every single person in this room knows who wrote it, who said it, and what the context is. Et tu, Brute, everybody knows. A rising tide lifts all boats. Everybody knows where those sayings came from. But we're taking that away from our children. And who's hurt the worst? Well, kids and the minorities that don't have access to this. This is putting a real divide between us. So here's the good news, though. So this is a mole. The whole diverse author thing is the mole. But if we whack that mole hard enough, it doesn't go back under. It dies because we're not going to go back to lousy social studies or lousy science. We have a rich canon of Western literature, and it's there and it's waiting for us. We just need to expose our kids to it. So, critical race theory. You guys all know that they're not teaching critical race theory in the schools, right? Yeah, no, they're not. They told us so we can believe it. But my district, I come from North Shore, which is just right at the borderline, half Snohomish, half King County. We do culturally responsive teaching, which oddly enough has the same 3 letters on it, doesn't it? And I put up here how many of you guys have heard the land acknowledgements? Most school districts are doing these at the beginning of their meetings. A lot of corporations are doing it. Sometimes sports teams are doing this. But here's an example of North Shore's land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the North Shore School District functions on Coast Salish lands in the areas that have been colonized, occupied, and renamed to Bothell, Kenmore, Redmond, and Woodinville. We acknowledge the experiences of genocide, forced relocation, ethnic cleansing, and the land theft of indigenous peoples. And it goes on about how wonderful the indigenous people are. And I'm sure they are. I'm not denigrating them. But this is CRT, guys. They just don't call it that. Don't be confused. And when I went on the site, the North Shore site, to get the exact wording so I could share it with groups, found out there's also an elementary level land acknowledgement. I had never seen that before. It's not as vile as this. It doesn't talk about genocide. But I don't know how they're using it. Are they doing it instead of Pledge of Allegiance? Yes. I don't know. Are they? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Good for you. And we need to stop just sitting there saying, oh, this is bad, somebody should do something about it. We need to counter it. And I refuse to take a knee when they do that, but I've started getting up and walking out when they're doing the land acknowledgement, and I come in for the rest of the meeting. So, what does culturally responsive teaching look like in practice? Next one, please. Thank you. Yeah, okay. So here's a math problem. Johnny and his family are driving to the amusement park. The park is 50 miles away. They have driven 20 miles. How much farther do they have left to go? Now, if you guys saw that on your child's worksheets or math books, you'd go, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not CRT. But remember, a culturally responsive teacher has to unpack these things. So before we answer this question, let's talk about, now, what is a family? And you can go into all of the different kinds of families there are. And then you can go into, can everybody afford an amusement park? What are some reasons people can't afford an amusement park? And then it's the ever-present, yeah, they're driving a car? Oh my gosh. What are we going to do about that? Maybe they should just stay home and pick up trash. I don't know. So you can see how much time an elementary classroom would spend on this. Think about it. If each class spends just 5 minutes, we could easily have spent 5 minutes going through different families. If each class spends just 5 minutes on this, culturally responsive teaching, 6 classes a day, that's 30 minutes a day. That's 2.5 hours a week. And I went to school before Common Core Math, so I think that works out to about 75 hours a year. They're spending simply on unpacking these things, being culturally responsive. Think how much better off our children would be if they were actually getting academics. And that is the message that we need to do, return to academic excellence. We don't have to fight them on their battlefield. We can say we want our kids to be, we want more than 50% of our kids reading, okay? So, what can you do about it? You can remove your children or grandchildren from government schools. That's the #1 thing. Yeah, thank you. And there are so many different programs available to help them, but remove your kids from public schools. But we cannot forget the other children. Not everybody can be removed. Some of us are grandparents, and we can't get our kids to get the kids out of school. We need to be there to protect the other kids. If you saw a car barreling at a toddler in the street, every single person here would reach out, grab that child, and pull them to safety. And that's what we need to do. So this is not a battle we can walk away, thank you, saying that, you know, I don't have kids in the school anymore. We have to save these children. So remove your children or grandchildren from government schools, provide accurate information, and discuss your beliefs with kids. Go back to dinner table discussions that are meaningful. Not did you get your homework done, but what is in your homework. Break it down. Teach your children critical thinking, books, lectures, music. You know, I sit with my granddaughter, and we watch television together. And I picked this one show that we were going to binge watch, and it was a takeoff of Anne of Green Gables, Anne with an E, and most of you guys are familiar with that wonderful story. I'm sorry, what? Oh, I thought somebody said something. So anyway, a wonderful story, and I started getting a little bit woke. And then finally there was this one episode, and I said, this is it, and I was so angry, and I'm throwing things. We are not going to watch this anymore. This was wrong, and this was wrong, and this was wrong. We aren't going to see this anymore. And my granddaughter's used to me, so okay, no, that's it. Well, I thought about it then. I thought, you know what? She's going to be navigating this world all by herself. If I'm not there watching it with her, I can't help her understand what is in those TV shows, that movie, the lyrics of the song she likes. So we continued to watch TV together with a pause button. And every time something would happen, I would say, you know, was that a good thing? How should they have handled it? We would talk about, I had her show me some of the shows that she liked to watch, Disney shows. And the ones she showed me weren't really promoting that ideology too much yet. But I got the chance to explain to her what a laugh track is. Laugh track is telling you what you should think is funny. I go, was that really funny what they said? No. But the laugh track made you think you should laugh. And the, the soundtrack, it's telling you how to feel, that you should feel anxious, that you should feel that this is going to be funny. So you need to prepare your children and your grandchildren for the world. Attend school board meetings and demand academic excellence, and that is always where we fall back to, academic excellence. Spread the word among family and friends. I've got a list of books. Run for school board or support someone who is running. Anybody here running? All right, what district? 3 in Marysville? Yay, what's your name? Laura White? Elora White. Thank you. District 3. Yay. So be there with your funds, be there knocking on doors for her, and once she gets elected, support her, go to the school board meetings and said, yes, I like what she said. Why aren't the rest of you guys saying that same thing? So thank you very much for doing that. Demand parental rights legislation. And in addition to 5599, which we've already talked about, there's also an initiative, 2081, which is, it will go on the, whereas the referendum will repeal a bad bill, the initiative will put forth a good bill, give us a chance to vote on a good bill, a parental rights bill that says you as parents have the right to know what's going on. One more minute? Okay. So, Moms for Liberty, let's see if we can go ahead and, so, yeah, okay, we'll go through that. Yeah, just real quickly, we worry about curriculum a lot, and we should. Pedagogy, however, is equally important, and that's the teaching that is going on. That's why I said you can whack those moles, but if the teachers have been trained in these Marxist schools, they're going to keep teaching that stuff. So we'll skip through this. He's kind of the leader there. So I'm not giving you guys a machete. This is death by 1,000 cuts. But you know, as awful as everything is right now, you know, we can't do anything about the weaponization of the judicial system right now as individuals. You know, it's difficult to do anything about the fact that we've given up our fuel, what is it, we're now reliant on other countries for our fuel. That's hard for us to do. But education is something, it's local, it's something we can really make a difference on. We can change our schools, we can change what's happening to our children. So Moms for Liberty, go ahead, and I think I've got, okay, so I just wanted to show you, this is what a hate group looks like. Okay, right there. But not a hate group. I don't want to put everybody together. BLM, Antifa, drag queens with children on their laps, not hate groups. So don't confuse us, okay? We're the evil ones fighting for parental rights. And so there's lots of information on the table back there. This is the last thing. There's a little information on reading and Moms for Liberty. Here are some recommendations for books and things you can do with your kids. Summer's coming up. If you're grandparents, take your kids to DC. Tell them the truth. You know, you can take kids, you know, concerts, talk about what merit is. This Pride Month, talk about merit and what you can actually be proud of. A couple of us are putting together a classical scholars camp. We're going to be teaching Western civilization to kids for a week. There's flyers back there. There's one going to be in Renton, and there's going to be one up in Monroe this summer. And there's a sheet that's got lots of action steps, things that you can do just as one person. You can do it as part of a group. You can do it as a single person to change things. We can make a difference. Death by 1,000 cuts. Every single person in here running for school board, supporting her, talking to your children. We are going to win this battle, and this is the most important battle of all. It's our children, and this is what informs what's happening next. So thank you very much. Join Moms for Liberty. That
was wonderful. Just dropped it. Well, isn't this morning just been so phenomenal already? And we're just still getting started. Georgine is going to introduce our next guest, but I just, come on up, Georgine, if you want. But I just wanted, Georgine introduced me to Brad a few years back, and I just have to say I just really, really love and adore this man. And last year when he decided he would, Georgine will go into more of his biography and all that, but he decided to run for Secretary of State. I called him up because I wanted to talk to him about a couple of things, and he got on the phone. And I just said, when he answered, he goes, hello? I go, hello, Brad. I said, and I just got so overwhelmed because he had just stepped into the fight for Secretary of State as a third candidate, as a sign-in candidate. And I told Brad, I said, I believe in you. I'm just so proud of you. And he goes, well, I believe in you. And so, anyways, the little story about Brad was that we was our write-in candidate. And so last year with the Secretary of State, there was the regular old middle-of-the-road, pretty sane Democrat. Then there was this crazy Democrat that wanted ranked choice voting and all this other stuff that got in. So we did a civics event up in Arlington. And one of the games that we do for the kids is a voter's ballot where we had the kids. It was a real pretty cute ballot, and we had a beautiful little red, white, and blue box. And we said, okay, kids, now you get to vote on either pizza or macaroni and cheese and for dinner. And we said, whoever wins at the end, you vote, mark your cards, put in the box, and at the end of the event, we're going to see who wins. And whoever wins, your parents have to make that tomorrow night, which means that the losers have to eat or absorb the winners. And so we were just trying to teach them the voting thing. Well, during the process at the civics event, some of the kids and moms are coming up, well, they don't like pizza and macaroni. Can they write in something? And so we said, well, we have a write-in candidate right now, so we thought let's let the kids write in. And so there was approximately maybe 60 or 70 kids. And the write-ins wrote in like bologna chicken nuggets, this and that. Well, the write-ins knocked out the macaroni and cheese. And at that same season, Brad knocked out the macaroni and cheese. So it was just such a visual experience. And so anyways, it was really fun. So here's Georgine.
Hello, everybody. Well, it is my pleasure and joy to introduce Brad Clippert to you. Brad was one of our state representatives down in Olympia. So he's now, I guess their title is the Honorable Brad Clippert. So I'm going to read a little of his bio. He's a 34-year military veteran, 20 years as an Army helicopter pilot, retired rank of colonel, commander, Washington State Guard, 30 years law enforcement officer, 23-year school resource officer, 14 years or 7 terms as state legislator. He's certified as a Washington State teacher in 1997. He has a master's degree in teaching. He's taught first grade to college, public and private school, nationally and internationally. He's also a licensed minister with the Assembly of God. Now, I'm part of the Federation of Republican Women, and we go down every year in February to visit the legislators, and the Republican legislators. And when Brad would come into our room, he comes running down the aisle holding his Bible up, and he just has a way to charge the atmosphere with faith and hope, and it's such a beautiful experience. Brad is also currently running for OSPI, the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. Come on up, Brad. So I want you to get the word out. We've got to get him in. We've got to get these bad actors that are corrupting our children out. Come on, Brad. And woo, here he comes, yeah. Brad Clippert. And he came all the way from Eastern Washington just to talk to us today.
Thank you. Don't leave me. Invite that other young lady who was just up here to come back up.
Mary?
Come on up, Mary. Okay, so you guys, before I get started, I'm going to push a button here. Oh, no, come on up here. You guys have to make a choice, okay? So first, let me stop right there. So pause. I want to acknowledge that Sammy Bird is here today. He's the chair of the Benton County Republican Party. Also, thank you to Snohomish County young Republicans. So thank you. You don't see the. Yeah, thank you guys for being here. So you got a choice right now that you have to make. This young lady said something to me a few minutes ago that not very many people said. Brad, I want you to go up there and be Brad. And because a lot of people are, Brad, I don't know if I can handle it much more Brad. I noticed there's a recording device here, and there's one back there. For Brad to be Brad, we got to turn those off. And I'll explain afterwards. But if you want Brad to be guarded the entire time that I talk, leave him on. So it's your choice. Do you want Brad to be Brad for 30? And here's I prayed for wisdom, okay? I said, Lord, give me tell me what to do. I don't know what to do with this. And you'll understand after I explain if you choose to turn them off. I heard that this last week, a congresswoman went into a private room to read the results of an investigation. They were not allowed to take notes in there. They were not allowed to record anything. All they could do is go into that private room and get the results of that investigation. And then she could come out and write notes of what she heard, read, and all that stuff. And I said, that's exactly it. So you'll understand if you choose to turn off the recording devices, and I'll explain to you exactly why. That works? Okay. Thank you. Love you guys. All right, so all recording devices are off? Okay, thanks. Would you please stand, sir?